today's video, we're going to look at all these different quadrilaterals in the coordinate world. So we're going to look at the coordinates of our points and think about what do we know how to do with coordinates. When we're given a grid and we're not given the sides or the angle measures, only two coordinates, the things that we've done the most this year is we've been able to calculate the slope and we've calculated the length. Those are the two main ones. And slope we know is subtracting the y's on top and the x's on the bottom. The length, if you remember, is the distance formula. We subtract the y's and then square them, subtract the x's and then square them, and then take the square root of all of that. Which one do you like better? I know you don't tend to like the distance formula, and that's true. The slope is easier. What we're going to do today in the coordinate world is we're going to learn how to determine whether a shape is just a parallelogram with no additional properties, or a rectangle, or a rhombus, or a square based only off of coordinates. Now we could do this with length because I know opposite sides have to be congruent, but that's a lot of work. So there's more ways to do this than just what I'm showing you. What I'm going to show you is the easiest way to do this. And the easiest way to do it is based only on slope. So what do we know about a parallelogram? We know opposite sides are parallel. What do we know about rectangles? Well, because a rectangle is a parallelogram, we do know that opposite sides are parallel as well. But in a rectangle, we also know that the consecutive sides are forming right angles, so they're going to be perpendicular. So now we have slopes. Parallel lines, remember, have same slopes. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So a rectangle, we should still find those opposite sides to be parallel, but the sides right next to each other we should find to be perpendicular. A rhombus has opposite sides parallel. We don't have four corner right angles, so our sides aren't perpendicular, but in the rhombus we learn that the diagonals are perpendicular. Now a square has everything. So the square has opposite sides parallel. It has consecutive sides perpendicular, and it has diagonals being perpendicular. So we are going to calculate all the slopes of all the sides and of the diagonals, and that's going to determine what kind of shape we have. So we have four coordinates here, A, B, C, D. We are going to start by finding all the four slopes. So the slope of AB, and subtract the y's on top, the x's on the bottom, and here are our coordinates up here. That gives us 3/2 as the slope of AB. Then we move on to find the slope of the next side, which is BC. So I'm looking at the two coordinates B and C. So subtract the y's on top, the x's on the bottom. That gives us a -2/3. And then our next side, slope of CD, -1 - 2, 5 - 7, -3 over a +3. I did something wrong here. What did I subtract wrong? So CD, so -1 - 2, 5 - 7, there we go. So 5 - 7 is going to give us a -2. A negative over a negative is going to make that a +3/2. And then our last slope is our last side of AD. So here's coordinate A and here's D. -1 - 1, 5 - 2 gives us a -2 over a +3. So when we look at our diagram, we see opposite sides are parallel, which is good because if we look at our criteria, every single one of them has opposite sides parallel. So that didn't maybe help us so much. But we look at the sides next to each other. This is 3/2 and this is a -2/3. Are those opposite reciprocals? Yes, they are. So this tells me that consecutive sides are perpendicular. So from here, the only two shapes that have consecutive sides being perpendicular is a rectangle or a square. So I know my two options is going to be one of these two, because those are the two ones that have corner right angles. And we know we have corner right angles based on the fact that consecutive sides are perpendicular to each other. Now the only difference between these two shapes is what's going on with the diagonals. So I have diagonal AC and I have diagonal AB. We're going to find the slope of AC. So that's y is on top, 2 minus 1, 7 minus 2. That gives us 1/5 for AC. And then our other diagonal, BD. Y is on top, so -1 minus 4. 5 minus 4 on the bottom. -5 over a +1 is a -5. So I look at those two slopes, and that tells me that my diagonals are perpendicular. So if I looked at the options, a rectangle does not have perpendicular diagonals, but a square does. So we're going to say that this shape is going to be a square because consecutive sides are perpendicular and diagonals are perpendicular. Each step along the way is going to help you eliminate options. So the sides eliminate the parallelogram and the rhombus because my consecutive sides were perpendicular. That limited me down to a rectangle or square. Then the diagonals will narrow it down from two choices to one.